Okay, welcome to Dr. Danielle Rice, who is a psychologist and associate professor in Ontario, Canada. She works in the mood disorders program of a hospital where she works with individuals that have depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorders. Dr. Rice's research is focused on health psychology and patient engagement in research. She's part of the Scleroderma Patient-Centered Intervention Network, otherwise known as SPIN, and has conducted research about the experience of caring for a loved one with scleroderma, with the goal of developing resources to decrease the burden that can be associated with caregiving. She's also written a freely available resource for caregivers supporting a loved one with scleroderma, and she often works with patients to help them improve their coping abilities. Her presentation today will focus on resilience and learning to increase motivation while living with a chronic health condition. I welcome Danielle today, and it's a pleasure to be working with you again. So welcome.
Thank you so much for the really kind introduction. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you. Good morning. It's such a different time here, so I hope everyone is feeling really rejuvenated there at the start of your day versus the end of the day here. But I'm feeling good. Had some nice treats and all that stuff. So what I'm going to do, hopefully, is share my slides. Okay. And I did get a good tip for this, but I don't know how to work my Google Drive very well. So let's see how this goes. Sure. Share my screen. Okay. So I may just look to everyone. Let's see. This will work. Okay, good. So I can kind of see if this is working. It'll just take me a second here. I'm going to try and go full screen. Okay, let's see. A little worried I'll lose everyone. So let's see. Can people see the slides?
Yes, we can. That's perfect.
Okay, great. So I can't see everyone, but actually I can't see anyone, but I think that's okay. I'll just minimize if I need to. But if you put your hand up, just please note I won't be able to see you, but you're welcome to interrupt me truly at any time. We're going to have the Q&A, but I like to also have anyone's questions if they come, if it's easier to ask during, no problem. So please do feel free to kind of interrupt me if you want. So thanks again for the nice introduction. Really happy to be here. I'm really glad to always have the opportunity to speak about mental health. I'm very biased because this is my profession, but I really do think that it's important for everyone and that all of us can learn new skills and tips and tricks to try and improve our mood. So while I'm the one speaking today and my interest is certainly in mental health as well as chronic conditions, each of you are really the experts in terms of scleroderma. You're living with this day to day. You're navigating the different mental health experience of managing scleroderma, and I don't want to take away from that. So please know that during the questions and answers, or again, anytime during the presentation, really welcome to have you share your experience. If you think I'm missing something, again, very happy to hear from you. You are the experts. You can also use the chat function. Again, I probably won't be able to see it, but we'll circle back during the Q&A so that I can connect with you if anything's come up in the chat. The other thing I will just note today is I don't have any conflicts of interest mostly, except for I did write that one book, but it's free. I don't get any funding from that. It's freely available, and I do mention it on one slide. So I guess that's a conflict of interest, but nothing financial there. So just to give a little bit of a roadmap for what we're going to be talking about today. The timing I've really estimated here, so we'll see how much I stick to this. But just a bit of a sense, we're going to start with talking about scleroderma and mental health. I'll do this fairly briefly because, again, I think that many of you would understand better than any literature has said and better than I can say what you live with on a day-to-day basis here. Then we're going to go into some information about resilience and what's called behavioral activation. Psychologists love to use fancy words for very not fancy concepts. So know that if behavioral activation is a new one, you're going to be familiar with it and you'll be pros by the end of this. And a lot of that content that we'll discuss with resilience and behavioral activation, it's practical tips and tools. I think theory is really important and background can be helpful, but I want you to be able to go out and hopefully try something new after this conversation and after this presentation. And then, of course, really importantly, we're going to move forward and have our question and discussions and get to know each other maybe a little bit better at that time too, or get to hear what you were speaking about if you're talking about resilience prior to me hopping on. So I'm going to start off here with just this little table. And there's the comparison here between acute illness and chronic disease. The reason I just want to start broad is so that everyone really sees and knows that, yes, some of these, the concepts here are different. This is probably something you've lived, but I think seeing it on paper, so to speak, really shows this difference. I mean, scleroderma can be uncertain. The cause of this can be uncertain, especially early on. Misdiagnosis can happen, as well as a very long time to get a diagnosis. It's kind of noting here, it can be difficult as opposed to you go to the doctor, your appendix hurts or something hurts a lot, and they say, okay, that's appendicitis, we're gonna take your appendix out. Scleroderma doesn't usually look like that. It's a bit longer of a process, much more complex typically, and a lot of different specialists are often involved. The other part I like to note here is this role of the professional. With a chronic disease, they're considered a teacher and a partner, whereas with acute illness, it's kind of like I mentioned, this is the concern, this is the treatment, best of luck, and you'll be on your way. And with that role of the professional, with the patient or with yourselves, you're really this active partner in your healthcare. I have no doubt that many of you have informed and educated health professionals previously, where it's less of this, even here saying the professional is the teacher and the partner. I know sometimes with people who aren't specialists, that looks a little bit different. And then certainly you're responsible for a lot of this daily management. So as opposed to other conditions where you have this regular, very direct follow-up, a lot of this really lies on your shoulders. And why that's important is because that can impact our mental health. What that day-to-day management of your disease looks like, that has a role on our stress, on our anxiety, and just really practically on how much you're taking on each day. So the biopsychosocial approach to chronic illness is just something that we can consider, again, of how mental health really links back, let me show it, and is relevant for scleroderma. Just put all these on there. Where when you have a chronic illness, even if we don't think about the rare part for a second, sleep may be impacted, fatigue. I mean, I don't have to say too much about that one. This is what many of you may experience using the spoon theory, which probably has been shared with you, where you only have so many spoons in a day. Where are we going to use them? Anxiety, stress, worry, and functional limitations. So this biopsychosocial approach is really saying all of these different facets, all of these different aspects of your chronic condition can impact your mood, can impact how things go each day, and can have an impact on the illness a bit as well. Now, when we get more into the actual rare aspect of this, so everything on that slide before, maybe that's relevant for something like diabetes as well, or a different chronic condition. But with a rare disease like scleroderma, there's a lot extra. There's this piece of things are unique, can feel a little bit more isolating, and there's very few handbooks or pamphlets that are readily available like they are. If I sit in my doctor's office, there's this nice shelf of pamphlets, and it's diabetes, it's cancer, dementia. There isn't anything for scleroderma. Maybe there are, maybe in Australia it looks a little bit different, but here it's really those super common conditions that they're this sort of standard care for. While living with scleroderma or any rare disease, you're actually kind of forced to take on these additional tasks where you're a researcher, for example, which perhaps you didn't sign up for. I kind of signed up for that in my career, but others did not. You're being kind of forced to be a care coordinator as well as an advocate for yourself. And these may be the unique roles that you have, but also that you share with a loved one, or that your support person, perhaps family or friend, connects with you on this too. Maybe they're helping with the care coordination, maybe they're driving. Regardless, this is something that impacts our mental health. And this is the first plug I want to make for the resilience. Becoming sort of part of this cycle here kind of forces a bit of resilience. It can be a positive in the sense that We're learning new skills. We're doing things that you probably could have never imagined yourself having to do, navigating this world of guidelines and what's trustworthy on Google, and does this rheumatologist recommendation match this bit of information I have. So that can build resilience, and it can also be something that gives us a bit of this sense of accomplishment. Not to say that it makes it easy, but it's to say that this little bit, this little part of you that may say, hey, I went in there and I advocated myself, and I shared that if you give me this medication, I think this might relate to this one, or I know someone in the community who said X. This can be that first little example I want to share about resilience. That's the adversity that you're facing, and you're doing something with it. Certainly there are going to be days where we sit back and it looks a little bit different, but these are tasks that I have no doubt all of you have some involvement in. And we're going to get into resilience a little bit more, but I just wanted to plug it first there with the idea that involves adversity. And as soon as you have a rare disease, and even other diseases as well, you've experienced some adversity. Absolutely no questions asked about that. And with the resilience piece is, okay, what do we do with that challenge? What do we do with that adversity? So here's the more official definition that I will use, where resilience is this ability to respond and grow after facing adversity, so a challenge and stress. So this is something that all of us do to some extent. I would say everyone that lives on this earth faces some challenge and has to do something with it. So the resilience piece is, what do we do once we're faced with this? And again, this is not to say 100% of the time you're saying, I'm gonna crush this, I'm going to fight back, I'm going to grow, I'm going to be thankful for this challenging and life-changing diagnosis. That's not the point of resilience. It's not to say everything is sunshine and rainbows. It's to say, when these adversities and stressors happen, how do I respond most of the time? After a couple of days, how do I move forward? And sometimes I wouldn't doubt with scleroderma, if some of this becomes second nature, you may not even know that you're doing this, probably day to day, week to week. So there are some kind of key components of resilience that I think are relevant to mention. I'm actually going to start on the right side. I wasn't able to move these around to do a nice left to right. But this first piece is commitment. And it's that commitment to a course of action to try and follow it through. We're going to get into this in the tips and the tricks, because I think this is hard in general. I have a bit of a mental commitment that I'll go to the gym three-ish times a week. I can honestly say I have not gone to the gym 3 times a week in probably over a year and a half. So there's a difference between the commitment and can we try and follow through. So we're going to get some tips and tricks a little bit later with this, but this is one part of resilience, is this commitment. Even though we feel this way, even though this is happening, how can I follow through on this action? This next one here is control. All of us want to feel a sense of control. As humans, we hate uncertainty. All of us, and especially when you're living with scleroderma, the uncertainty is amplified, absolutely. But what we can do is try and develop beliefs in our abilities to increase our feelings of control. So this idea of, when stressful situations happen, I may not be able to specifically control the outcome, but I control my response to it. I know that, kind of this overarching thought is, no matter what happens, I can cope. And I was thinking when preparing for this talk, how you're all in Australia and how you have beautiful weather, and there's the quote of, I can't stop the waves, but I can learn how to surf, or something like this. I can't fathom this. We have snow outside. It's just not what happens here in Canada. But the message I love. I mean, we can't stop these waves, but we can learn how to ride them, or learn how to surf with them. And then there's a challenge, the challenge piece, which this is the third kind of key to resilience, which is we can frame our stressful situations as challenges. So again, we're not saying these are easy situations. I have this diagnosis. It's fine. I'll just go on as everything was the same. But we can notice it's a challenge, and it can also be a little bit of an opportunity to grow. How can we increase our feelings of control? We can say, you know what, this will give me an opportunity, or this gives me, kind of forces me into this place where I'm going to look up some parts of my care that are important. I'm going to look up rheumatologists in the area, or I'm going to look up the different resources that exist in North America to see if there's anything different than here. So these are things that that are quite relevant to think about for resilience, but also that we'll kind of tap onto in the next part of the presentation. Okay. So this is where I'm going to switch gears a little bit just to go from that information sharing piece to more of some practical tips. I mean, I think this is what can be really useful. And I like to give a little preface that every tip and trick is not going to work for every person for the most part. I think of this as like adding tools to our toolbox. And if you try one tool and it doesn't work, that's okay. You can try another one. The other thing that I'll just note is this can be a nice starting point. It's like a little bit of a intro session, so to speak, since we just have a specific amount of time together. But it's a bit of an intro session for if you find something maybe of interest, or you think, I want to do this, for me, I want to go to the gym 3 times a week, but I'm just having this challenge moving forward with it. Maybe you bring some of these skills or tips and tricks to your GP, your family doctor, or a friend or a mental health professional, and you say, this is a strategy that I was discussing. I think it could be helpful, but I'd like to dig into it a little bit more. So thinking about if optimizing things individually would be helpful for you can be something you think about with this little intro as well. So I like to start off with the baseline. You can call it the boring baseline if you want. I will not take offense, but I just am not doing my due diligence if I don't mention it. Especially with scleroderma, with any chronic condition, I am just, I'm guilty if I were to overlook this. And it's something that we do often overlook. So these are this is what I call, if you can see my hands, our baseline. So when our baseline isn't going so well, it's hard to thrive. It's hard to build our resilience when our baseline's struggling. So I'll note that I know sleep can be impacted. So the 7 to 9, I should probably extend that to about 5 to 10. You'll know what works best for you. Sleep isn't just a prescribed, we all need 8 hours. It's kind of like a shoe size. If I need 5 hours of sleep and I'm getting 10, that's just not going to fit that well. Or if I'm a size 10 in shoes and I'm trying to squeeze into a 5, it's not going to work well. So you know yourselves best for that range for sleep. But certainly if we're not sleeping well, if this is one of our big challenges, this is something I recommend trying to get a bit of a hold on if possible, prior to focusing too much on the other things. Some people, maybe they'll say, I get 4 hours and that's that. Okay, if that's working for you, that's the important piece. But it's hard when we're tired. It's hard when we're extra fatigued, extra challenged in that area to then add things on top. Similar with eating, I know this is impacted with GI symptoms. So whatever regular small meals or large meals, whatever works for you, we want to make sure that's happening because this impacts our energy again as well. Movement. We'll talk more about this after, but trying to get some enjoyable movement. So maybe I don't go to the gym, but I park my car a little farther, listen to some nice music on my way into work. Then substance use, no judgment on what this is. It's different for each person. Just like to kind of flag, how's it impacting your mood? If substance use is not working the way that you want, if it's seeming a little bit to have a negative impact on your life, good time to kind of reflect and say, hey, maybe this is something I want to work on or think about. Now, to get past our baseline, I'm just going to briefly mention cognitive behavioral therapy. Not going to go too much into it in depth. If people are ever interested, I can certainly recommend lots of books and resources. But the concept behind CBT is that how we think affects how we feel, and it impacts how we behave. So this ties into resilience, because if we think that I'm not going to be able to manage this, I will not be able to move forward, I will not grow from this, my emotion is going to be pretty low. It's going to be pretty down, pretty disappointed, a little deflated. And my behavior is probably going to be, I'm not going to connect with my rheumatologist. I'm not going to see if I can change my, X, Y, Z. I'm going to kind of stay in this place, whatever this may be, stay in bed, and just hope that things get a little bit better. So it's probably not our ideal approach. So this just really highlights that how we're thinking affects how we feel and affects how we behave. And I always say the same line where if I could go in there and I could change everyone's emotion, or I could just like give you resilience or give you neutral, content, or positive emotions, I would. And I think every other mental health professional in the world probably would too. Closest we have to this are some medications for mood, which can certainly be helpful. But again, it's not so much a light switch. What we can do though is if we adjust our thoughts and or adjust our behaviors, even changing one of these changes our whole cycle. So pretend there are little arrows this way. As soon as we change our thoughts, this actually changes our emotions too and our behaviors. And same with when if we address the behaviors. So if we tackle both of these, that's a pretty good sign for impacting these emotions more in the way that that you want. So to get into this word behavioral activation, the reason that I thought this is quite relevant is because I think I saw some notes of topics that were of interest that was about kind of how do we do things when we're unmotivated, or how do we do things when we're struggling, and that is behavioral activation. That is something that's like a core component of our mood and how we function. So I'll get into quite a few little tips about behavioral activation. And again, the word is really not that fancy. It's the idea of do more of the things that make you feel good, do less of the things that make you feel bad. That's how I describe it, and I think it's a much easier way to think of it rather than this term behavioral activation. Behavioral activation is we're engaging with something in our life. So this is like a really tried and true method for managing mood and helps build that resilience up. It's like building us some of that reserve that when we feel low. So I'll start off with just, again, a couple examples of behavioral activation. Often the idea is what I said is, okay, we have to go to the gym. We don't need to. We can kind of take that out. For me, I have a little one, she's quite young, and I just can't seem to get to the gym because I cannot bring my 2-year-old with me on the elliptical. You can call it an excuse, that's okay, but practically it's quite challenging if I don't have childcare for my little one to get to the gym. So instead, behavioral activation is really anything that we're engaging in our life that brings a sense of accomplishment or a sense of enjoyment. So accomplishment or enjoyment or pleasure, whichever word fits best with you. So mastery is a sense of accomplishment. So cleaning the house, this is not necessarily fun. But if we do our dishes or we clean a table that we've been avoiding, if we stock the toilet paper and it hadn't been stocked, this is that sense of I'm purposefully doing something that's important to me, and that will give me that little sense of accomplishment. Here in Canada, it's our tax time. Taxes are not an enjoyable activity, but this is something that when they're done, you make that check off the list, and it's a really nice feeling. On the more enjoyable or pleasurable side, speaking with friends, reading, whatever that may be, these are ways that you're engaging and you're doing this purposefully. It's not just, oh, all of a sudden, my friend called and that's great, but also can we plan this into our day? If Mondays are my hardest day of the week, can my lunchtime be when I schedule a call with my friend? So that's that really purposeful behavioral activation. And that has to do with this activity scheduling. So taking time for yourself is sort of another concept here that's really core to it. Now, there we go. The question is, I think an important part of behavioral activation that is the sticky point is that here's what we want. We are going to feel down some days. We're going to feel low energy. You're going to have some symptoms that are or flare-ups, and any big flare-up, please, you care for yourself the best way that you know how. That's what matters. I'm talking about these other days where feeling, physically like, yes, there are probably some things I could do, but sometimes things get in the way. So often what we'll say is, once I feel better, then I'm going to be motivated, and then I'm going to make a change. So this is the cycle that most of us want, and that most of us fall into, is that on this day, once I feel energized or I feel better, then I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to feel motivated, and I'm going to feel better that day. The problem is, remember resilience, how we like control? We just don't have much control over if we wake up and if we feel quote unquote better. Unfortunately, we can't turn that switch on. We've now taken all of our control out of this concept of feeling better and making a change. So what we want to do is we actually want to flip this model on its head. So maybe what we want is that other slide, but what we need is to make the change. When we make the change, we're going to feel motivated, then we're going to feel better. And this is really the cycle that we want, is making the change, even when we feel crappy. And we'll get into tips. This is not a Nike commercial of just do it. If it was, it'd be much easier. But the idea is we want to make this little change, then we're going to feel the motivation. then we're going to feel better. So we flip this model on its head. We start trying things in a different way. And again, lots of research to show that this works, but I think the easiest way to see how this works is to try it. So I would encourage that. So how do we do this? This is the close to Nike statement, but it's a little different. It's this concept of follow the plan, not the mood. And I encourage everyone to think about that, to write it down if you need to. Make a little sticky note. This is in my head often. It's follow the plan, not the mood. So maybe I wake up and I feel tired, or I wake up and I feel down. And if I feel down, why would I want to go for a walk? I don't feel well. Okay, but I'm going to tell myself I'm going to follow the plan, not the mood of feeling down. So this becomes a habit. It becomes something where once you try it once, you take note, how did that feel? Most of us will say, sure, I'll try this once, see how it goes. That's what I'd encourage. If you follow that plan and not the mood, how does that go? Typically, we find it works better, and it helps to do this. We're going to make the change. We're going to follow that plan. And whether you put that in your calendar or in an agenda, this is something that we try. Again, with the grain of salt, we're following the plan, not the mood, as opposed to follow the plan, not the physical symptoms. If you have a flare-up, you know your limits. This is not to go against that. This is to say when symptoms are okay, when you're feeling physically sort of your quote unquote average self, but maybe mood is down, that's the time to follow that plan. Again, lots of tips to do this, and we'll get through a few today, but certainly I'd encourage anyone that's interested in this to Google behavioral activation tips, and there's some books I've noted at the end, and always happy to connect on resources if of interest. So one of the ways that we can try and sort of follow our plan and not the mood is to have what I call small, medium, and large ticket items for behavioral activation. And I was going to say that we could chat about these, but we can discuss them at our Q&A if that's maybe, I think that'll be a little more feasible just because I can't see the chat. But these are the things where if I say, I'm going to follow my plan, not the mood, good, got it. But what I want to do is go for a weekend getaway. That's my plan. Even if I feel down, I'm going to go for my weekend getaway. This is like a large ticket item that uses a lot of resources in terms of financial, but also planning. I now have to, as I mentioned, I have to sort out childcare. I have to make sure that my work is all done and that I'm going to be gone to this location, Friday night. This is a large ticket item, and we want to set ourselves up for success. So I'd really encourage people to have a little list of small, medium, and large ticket items. I have some people that they'll write these down, they'll put them in a jar and they'll pull it out, which I love. Whatever creativity you have, I think is a good idea. But it's to let us know, okay, a small ticket item for behavioral activation, we want to be able to have this as something we can maybe even do every day. So maybe this is having a cup of coffee while it's hot. Maybe this is reading the newspaper outside. Maybe this is taking, 5 minutes uninterrupted to scroll your phone. Whatever it is, if it's written down, it's a little bit easier to come up with this conscious effort of doing things that are important to us. So just the small, medium, and large is just this idea that sometimes we want to aim high. I want to go to that gym. I want to go 3 times a week. Let's take it down a notch. Can I go for one walk? That's one walk every day. That's at least, 50 steps in a row or something like this. Can I go get the mail every day? That may be a little closer to something that we can follow that plan, not the mood. Now, the other concept I want to highlight is values. And the reason why I think this is quite relevant is because if you think of your spoons, if you think of the days that you're feeling down, we only have so much in terms of our energy. And if people's mood is a little bit lower, or if anxiety is kind of taking hold of our lives, we only have so many reserves, and we want to think about where to spend our time. So I had that small, medium, and large ticket item. Maybe under small, I have paint my nails, have coffee, watch a show, go for a walk with my family. Whatever those small, medium, and large ticket items are, sometimes it's hard to know what quote unquote should I do. That's where values can be helpful. Values is a bit of this roadmap for what's important to me and where do I want to spend my time. I won't go too much into each one, but what can be helpful, and I'm happy to send these slides out. What can be helpful is to think about these different domains. How important are they to you? How satisfied are you with where they're at? So maybe, I shared I want to go to the gym. Maybe that's something pretty important to me is my physical well-being. Maybe that's a 10 of 10. Maybe for satisfied, I'm about 7 of 10. Well, that's going to tell me when I'm trying to make plans or when I'm trying to build my resilience up, these are the values that I want to focus on. So again, this has to do with that piece of control for resilience. It also has to do with the challenge. If I'm challenged and I only have so many resources in the day or in the week, where do I want to spend that time? Because this is your compass and you can choose where and how, but knowing what it is that's most important to you, reflecting on it and living in line with those values can really, really improve how you're doing. I also always like to note parenting and caregiving. Pets go in here too. We don't want to forget about the pets and absolutely that pet care and time with pets can go in there. You may find some of these are not relevant for you, and that's totally fine. You can cross them off, not relevant. But if you focus on the ones that are important and see this gap, it can help guide where you want to spend your time. Now, with that in mind, how do we, when we have our values, let's say my value is about physical health, maybe my value is about my family, we can break this down to our goals. So people may have heard of SMART goals before, but I think it's a really nice thing to just touch on. That also has to do with our mental health. So if I'm kind of quote unquote aimlessly like walking around the world, when something negative happens, when I get that negative test result, I may feel deflated. I may not know what to do next. So our values can guide us, so can our goals. And this can all kind of tie in together. The behavioral activation is engaging in life. What am I going to do? The things that I value. What more specifically am I going to do? My goals. What am I going to work on? It's my goals. So we want our goals to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. So to break that down a little bit more, the nice example, I guess I'll say nice, but the challenging example that we often have is people say, I want to eat better. And that's a nice goal. That's a great goal. The thing is, it's not very specific. It's hard to know if we've achieved it because we can't measure it. I don't know if it's realistic depending how someone eats. And I want to eat better. Is that tomorrow? Is that for the next 3 years? Is that starting 10 years from now when I'm older and I feel like I can't eat the chocolate chip cookies that I often eat? We want to be able to break this down because, again, this is going to help guide us, guide our efforts, guide our energies. So an example of a SMART goal would be something like to walk outside 2 days per week for 10 to 20 minutes starting Sunday, April 2nd, 2023. Okay. I have this goal. This gives me a sense of what to do. I'm going to put it in my little calendar. That's going to be my activity that gives me some enjoyment. And it also actually is going to give me a sense of accomplishment. Now there's a silent F in here. I don't know where it goes. You can choose where it goes. Maybe at the beginning. That's kind of where the silent ones always go. So there's a silent F here, and that's for flexibility. That's where we're going to follow the plan, not the mood. But life gets in the way sometimes. And we're going to be flexible on that. That's where maybe I could put here, I'm going to walk 1 to 2 times for 5 to 20 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes or something like that. These ranges are helpful to build in your life. You may have more medical appointments 1 week than you expected. You may have a change in your care, a change in your focus, a change in your values. You want to make sure that there's no guilt felt for that. So that's where that flexibility goes in terms of your goals. So I'm going to move us now. Maybe I should highlight what I've spoken about so far. This is the B for the most part, that cognitive behavioral therapy, our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotions. That what we just talked about is our B, our behaviors. What are the things we're going to do? How are we going to engage with our life? What is this going to look like? How can I build that resilience up, build those, sometimes I talk about building the calluses, but it's really like building the reserves so that if something challenging happens, that's okay. I've built myself up to be able to then get in that more resilient mindset. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the C in CBT, the cognition, and which is really just a way of saying our thoughts. So maybe I want to follow the plan and not the mood, but I have these pesky thoughts that get in the way, like I'm too tired, or I have the thought, there's no point in going to the gym. I'm only going to be able to stay 20 minutes. I might as well just stay and keep watching my reality TV shows I've been watching, because that's been That's doing something. So we want to identify if there are some thinking patterns that maybe are getting in the way, because that's just another way to address our emotions. So one question we can ask ourselves, if we're feeling low in an emotion or quite anxious, we can ask ourselves, am I being self-critical? So am I being critical to myself? Am I being negative or critical of others? It's a way, again, if we feel that mood we're not wanting to feel, we can do a behavior. We can do a small, medium, or large ticket item. But we can also take a little closer look at our thoughts. And sometimes we're engaging in thinking styles that just aren't that helpful. Often this is a pattern. We all engage in unhelpful thinking styles, but sometimes it's happening more often than not. And that's when we can find our mood is in a place we don't want it to be for longer than we'd expect. We all go through different emotions, and that's part of being human, and that's a good thing that we feel these different emotions. But if we're stuck feeling down for a couple weeks at a time, or feeling anxious, ongoing, or very, very fearful, it's a good time to look at our thoughts. So I just have a couple of these here, and there are various different types of unhelpful thinking styles. Also would really encourage, if anyone's interested, Googling, actually I think it's just called Unhelpful Thinking Styles, a really nice infographic that I actually have on my wall here. I have on my fridge at home. Gave it to my very sweet mother-in-law. Can be helpful for anyone. So first, are we using some all or nothing thinking? So like this, it will never get better. I'll never feel the way that I used to. And this is not to say that that's not correct. Maybe you will never feel that same way you used to. Maybe you will never have the same physical abilities that you used to. But is this a helpful thought? Is this bringing you towards those values that you flagged are important? For example, your family or your community. I'm having a thought I'll never get better. I probably don't want to spend some time with my nice Scleroderma community because I'm kind of down. So trying to see if all or nothing thinking is happening can be quite useful. Labeling, another one, I'm such a, or they're being, sometimes these words go to medical professionals, they're being something, or they're such a something or other. And again, is it helpful? Which maybe sometimes it is. Maybe that's you venting, and that's great. But if you're finding that they're not so helpful, time to make some changes. And then sometimes we have unrealistic expectations. So this is when our musts and our shoulds come out. The shoulds almost always induce guilt. I should do this or I should do that is going to be almost instantly followed by an emotion of guilt, which is not really where we want to sit. So I like to give the little quick tip, quick change for the should, change it to a could. So let's say I'm lying on the couch, I'm watching Love is Blind on Netflix. I don't know if anyone watches that, if it's there in Australia, but it's out now. So I'm there, I'm on my couch, I'm watching this reality TV show, and I'm saying to myself, I should be doing the dishes. That's going to come in my head. That's going to cause some guilt. And now I'm not enjoying my TV show as much. So what we can do is change it to a could. I could be doing the dishes right now, and I will after I've watched my show. Or I could be doing the dishes right now, but I had a long day. I had a longer day than usual, and I need some time to rest. So that's a simple change in some of these letters can be that way to go from an unhelpful thinking style to something that's a little bit kinder to ourselves and is not going to induce that strong guilt. So that's kind of something to think about, and it's one of the easier changes. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I promise you, once you get into the shoulds habit, as soon as you hear other people say should, you're going to have a little flag go up, and then you have to decide if that's someone that you want to give this tip to or not. If I'm at the grocery store and I hear someone say should, I always want to help them or change their perspective, but it's not the appropriate setting. So watch if you start doing that. So one of the things we can try and do if we have this all or nothing thinking style, that first one, we can try and think of things on a continuum. So rather than I will never be the person that I was before I had scleroderma, something like this. We can do something like, okay, well, who do you want to be? Maybe I want to be someone that has good mental health. Maybe I want to have good physical health. Maybe I want to have supportive relationships, and I want to do some volunteer tasks. That's the person that I want to be. That's the person that I was. Well, okay, well, maybe your mental health, my memory always goes bad here. Maybe your mental health is a 40. Everyone can keep me accountable if I forget these numbers. Maybe mental health is a 40. Maybe with scleroderma, you feel like your physical health is low. Maybe you feel like it's a 10. But with this new diagnosis, you've had some new relationships. You're part of this community now. Your family's connected more, wanting to support you. Maybe your workplace is trying to be helpful. Maybe the supportive relationships is actually up with a 90. And volunteering or day-to-day tasks, yeah, you're still doing them. Maybe they look different. So maybe this is an 80. So rather than saying, I'll never be the person that I was, this now looks a little bit different with a 40, a 10, and 90 and an 80. Again, sorry if my memory screwed me up there. But this is where all of a sudden I'll never be the person that I was changes to something like, although my physical health and my mental health isn't exactly where I want it to be, I'm working hard on my relationships, I'm still volunteering, and I'm attending these virtual education sessions to try and support my mental health, and I'm attending my appointments to try and help my physical health. So it's a different relationship with our thoughts that go from quite negative, I'll never be the same, to looking more on the continuum. So I'd really encourage trying to think of things rather than all or nothing, to those shades of gray. Can we inject some shades of gray and really see what this looks like? The other aspect of thinking styles that can be helpful is self-compassion. There's lots that you can look up with self-compassion. There's a name, Kristen Neff. We were just watching her video at work today where she talks about self-compassion. This is the idea of being kind to ourselves. One simple way to think about it is, would I say what I'm saying to myself to my best friend? Would I say these things to someone that I love? Would I say these things to a stranger, or even someone that I don't like? Often we're quite critical and judging of ourselves, but we wouldn't say those same things to others. So now's that time to really try and practice being compassionate to ourselves, being kind to ourselves, even if you're experiencing something that's challenging. Again, this is that resilience. We're facing adversity, and how are we moving on with it? How are we moving forward? How are we growing? So rather than having some of these thoughts like I'm a failure, or I'm no good, or things will, I'll never be better, can we try and say, while I may be struggling today, I'm doing the best I can, and I'm working really hard on X, Y, or Z, or I may be struggling today, and everyone struggles. It's okay that I'm struggling. This is part of life. And although I feel crappy, it's nothing against me. It's what's happening right now. So it's really bringing that kindness, understanding, and non-judgmental attitude that I have no doubt all of you bring to each other and other individuals you interact with too. So just try and think, would I say this to my friend, or what would I say to my friend if they came to me? What would I say? Can we bring that same kindness to ourselves? So just being mindful of time. I think we're doing really well here in terms of me not rushing through the resources. I just wanted to put a couple resources out there. I think many of them you may already use, but just something to think about. Like I said, I'm always happy to share other links, resources, books, websites. I'm always interested in discussing mental health, so everyone's always welcome to reach out. Know that I may not always be the quickest at email responding, but I always get there. So support groups, this is a great way to build that resilience, to connect with others, to know, yeah, we have some shared experience of adversity, and here's how we're managing it nonetheless. So there are lots of these. Unfortunately, I have these numbers for North America just because I'm here, so I apologize. I don't have these numbers for you, but I know that your organizations also have these types of resources, and I know that I've been told that we're also very welcoming to any individuals, even if not in the exact area. So these are really meetings that can help people facing similar challenges to empower one another and form some social connections. We don't want to feel isolated, and that's what rare diseases can often do. SPIN, I always have to put a little plug in for the Scleroderma Patient-Centered Intervention Network. This is run out of Quebec, Canada, by Brett Toombs, as well as numerous other people, lots of people with lived experience, rheumatologists, psychologists, other professionals as well. So this is Another way to connect with others experiencing your same condition, and Spin really works to try and create resources that are freely available, testing them, make sure that they're helpful first off, and then sharing them with the community. So this certainly can be a great resource. And this is just a little example of what some of the website can look like and what's available. I think there's a free hand tool right now, and I know they're working on a ton of other resources as always. Couple of books here. I didn't go Scleroderma specific because some of the concepts, and sorry, this one's blurry, but some of the concepts in both of these books are really grounded in that cognitive behavioral therapy framework that we discussed today. So I thought that may be a little bit more relevant to share. These treatments that work books, there's some for almost any condition you can think of, very evidence-based. They're kind of this workbook style, and yeah, a really nice way to kind of self-lead your care if that's of interest for mental health. Another one, I thought this one with the invisible chronic illness could be relevant as well. Again, this is my conflict of interest. I don't receive any funding for this, but everyone and anyone is welcome to have this resource. It's available on Scleroderma Society of Ontario. It was drafted for loved ones of those with scleroderma, but it could certainly be used for those living with scleroderma as well, in terms of get lots into self-compassion there, lots into how to navigate keeping yourself well as well as you can to not get burnt out. So again, a bit of a different focus, but you're welcome to share this with others. And again, it's freely available. And I thought I should also plug this. I mean, right now, myself, some rheumatologists, people who have experience, and some other psychologists are developing what we're calling a mental health toolkit, specifically for people living with scleroderma, to address the mental health challenges. So this is right now, it's in the development phase, but we're moving quite quickly through it. Hopefully it'll be available in the next couple of months. And it's going to be available in Canada first, but I'm hopeful and very open to expanding this to others. So we're going to be developing these resources specifically, like it's almost like cognitive behavioral therapy type tools, but directed and tailored towards the experiences of people that have scleroderma. So just feel free to be on the lookout for this. And again, that would be freely available as well. We're wanting to share tools rather than make them inaccessible. So I think, let's see. Yes, I think now I should take this time just to a bit of a blanket thank you to the various individuals that, Spin. That's how I got started in this field. Did my schooling at McGill, and then this is where I'm at now. That's helped support some of this work too. So I think now is a perfect time to thank everyone and also hand it over for some questions and discussion.